Good afternoon. I would like to begin by acknowledging that we are in Treaty 4 territory of the Cree Saulteaux, Dakota, Nakoda, Lakota, and the homeland of the Métis Nation. All the people here are beneficiaries of this peace and friendship treaty. Today, these lands continue to be shared territory of many diverse peoples from the near and far. We are committed to ensuring that the spirit of reconciliation is honored and respected. Thank you for attending today's media release. I'm Superintendent Frederick Fontaine, and this is Inspector Ashley St. Germain of the Saskatchewan Major Crimes Branch. Inspector St. Germain will be providing the updates to you today, and I'll be providing the information in French following her statement. Afterwards, we'll take questions from our news partner. Thank you for reserving them until the question and answer period. Bonjour à tous. J'aimerais commencer par vous rappeler que nous nous trouvons sur le territoire du traité numéro 4 des Cris, des Saulteaux, des Dakota, des Nakoda, des Lakota et sur la partie des nations métisses. Tous les peuples ici présents sont les bénéficiaires de ce traité de paix et d'amitié. Aujourd'hui, cette terre continue d'être le territoire partagé par de nombreux peuples divers, proches ou lointains. Nous sommes déterminés à faire en sorte que l'esprit de réconciliation soit honoré et respecté. Je vous remercie de votre participation à la conférence de presse aujourd'hui. Je suis le surintendant Frédéric Fontaine et voici l'inspecteur Ashley Saint-Germain. Elle est l'officier responsable de la sous-direction des crimes majeurs de la GRC de la Saskatchewan. Elle vous fournira les mises à jour aujourd'hui et je vous fournirai les informations en français. Après nos déclarations, nous répondrons aux questions des partenaires. Merci de les réserver jusqu'à la période de réponse. Okay. Now I'll leave the mic for Ashley.
Good afternoon. I'm Inspector Ashley St. Germain, the Senior Investigative Officer for the Saskatchewan RCMP Major Crimes Branch. I want to begin by sharing condolences on behalf of the RCMP to all of those impacted by the homicides of the 4 individuals yesterday on the Carry the Kettle Nakoda Nation. At this time, we are not able to name the victims publicly as the Saskatchewan Coroner Service continues their part in this investigation, working to definitively confirm the identities of the deceased. We can say that among the individuals or the victims, there were 2 adult females and 2 adult male victims. The Saskatchewan RCMP has a family liaison team working with the families of those believed to be the victims to provide them with investigational updates and connect them with the necessary support services. We know that when these unimaginable tragedies happen, it can be easy to speculate and spread rumors, particularly in this age of social media. I'd like to remind the public that the families of the victims have suffered an incredible loss, and I ask you to be mindful of the grief that they're experiencing. If you have information about a crime, please share that directly with the police so they can examine it thoroughly. The Saskatchewan RCMP continues to investigate this quadruple homicide as well as another serious firearms-related offense that occurred in close time and proximity. Investigators have been working diligently to determine the circumstances around both of the incidents and whether or not they are related. Right now, here is what we are able to tell you. At approximately 11:15 a.m. on Tuesday, February 4th, File Hills Police Service received a report of a sudden death on Carry the Kettle, Nakoda Nation. When the File Hills Police Service arrived at the residence, they located 4 individuals deceased inside and immediately determined the circumstances to be suspicious. As a result, the Saskatchewan RCMP Major Crimes Branch was contacted to assist and has since taken care of the investigation. At this point, we do believe that the residence was targeted. A short time later, yesterday afternoon, another incident occurred in the same part of the province at approximately 3:15 p.m. RCMP received a report of an adult male pointing a gun at individuals on Zagime Anishinabek. Investigation determined that the suspect in that instance was believed to be 29-year-old Keegan Panepikisik. He was arrested by Regina Police Service early this morning at a residence on Matthew Crescent in Regina. As a result of the continued investigation, Keegan Panapakisik has been charged with 1 count of pointing a firearm and 1 count of possession of a firearm while prohibited. 2 other individuals were also taken into custody at the residence in Regina, and officers continue to investigate their involvement, if any, with the firearm pointing incident. We know when tragedies such as these homicides occur, there is a lot of fear and alarm felt in the communities. We want to assure residents that at this time, we do not believe there's an elevated risk to public safety in relation to these incidents. Throughout the day yesterday, RCMP investigators and emergency alert issuers continually discussed if there was a need to issue a dangerous person alert. We considered all of the information as it was received and decided whether to issue an alert considering the information that we knew at that time. Based on how the incident on Zagime evolved yesterday, we did not proceed with issuing an alert. The Saskatchewan RCMP Major Crimes Branch continues to investigate and work with our partner agencies at the File Hills and Regina Police Services to determine the circumstances and motivations surrounding these 2 incidents and whether or not they are related. We want to assure the public that we will provide updates about these investigations as soon as we are able. Thank you.
Je tiens tout d'abord à présenter mes condoléances au nom de la GRC à toutes les personnes touchées par les 4 homicides survenus hier dans la Première Nation Carrie de Kettle. Pour l'instant, nous ne sommes pas en mesure d'annoncer publiquement le nom des victimes car le bureau du coroner de la Saskatchewan poursuit son enquête et s'efforce de confirmer avec certitude l'identité des personnes décédées. Nous pouvons affirmer que parmi les victimes se trouvaient 2 femmes et 2 hommes adultes. La GRC de la Saskatchewan dispose d'une équipe de liaison avec les familles qui travaillent avec les proches des victimes présumées pour leur fournir des mises à jour sur l'enquête et les mettre en contact avec les services de soutien nécessaires. Nous savons que lorsque de telles tragédies imaginables se produisent, il peut être facile de spéculer et de répandre des rumeurs, en particulier à l'ère des médias sociaux. J'aimerais rappeler au public que les familles de victimes ont subi une perte incroyable et je vous demande d'être sensibles au chagrin qu'ils éprouvent. Si vous disposez d'informations sur un crime, communiquez directement avec la police afin que cette dernière puisse les examiner de manière approfondie. La GRC de la Saskatchewan continue d'enquêter sur ce quadruple homicide ainsi que sur tout autre incident grave lié aux armes à feu qui s'est produit non loin et peu de temps après les homicides. Les enquêteurs travaillent avec diligence pour déterminer les circonstances de ces 2 incidents et pour déterminer s'ils sont liés ou non. Pour l'instant, voici ce que nous sommes en mesure de vous partager. Vers 11h15, le mardi 4 février, le service de police de File Hills a été informé d'une mort subite survenue dans la Première Nation Carrie de Kettle. Lorsque les agents du service de police de File Hills sont arrivés à la résidence, ils ont trouvé 4 personnes décédées à l'intérieur et ont immédiatement déterminé que les circonstances étaient suspectes. En conséquence, à l'aide des agents des crimes majeurs de la GRC de la Saskatchewan, a été sollicité. Ces derniers ont depuis pris les rênes sur l'enquête. À ce stade, la police pense que la résidence a été ciblée. Peu de temps après, hier après-midi, un autre incident s'est produit dans le même secteur de la province. Vers 15h15, la GRC a reçu un signalement qui indiquait qu'un homme adulte pointait une arme à feu sur des personnes à Zagime Anishinabek. L'enquête a permis de déterminer que le suspect était Keegan Panapakisik, un homme de 29 ans. Il a été arrêté par le service de police de Regina tôt ce matin dans une résidence située sur le croissant Mathieu à Regina. À la suite d'une enquête, les chefs d'accusation suivants ont été déposés à l'endroit de Keegan Panapakisik. Braquage d'une arme à feu, possession d'une arme à feu en dépit d'une interdiction. 2 autres personnes ont été également arrêtées à la résidence et sont présentement sous garde. Les policiers continuent d'enquêter pour déterminer si ces 2 personnes ont également participé à l'incident au cours duquel une arme à feu a été braquée. Nous savons que lorsque ces que lors de ces tragédies, telles les homicides, se produisent, la population ressent beaucoup de peur et d'inquiétude. Nous tenons à rassurer les résidents qu'à l'heure actuelle, nous ne pensons pas qu'il y ait un risque élevé pour la sécurité publique lié à cet incident. Tout au long de la journée d'hier, les enquêteurs de la GRC et les diviseurs d'alerte d'urgence ont discuté de la nécessité d'émettre une alerte pour personnes dangereuses. Nous examinons toutes les nouvelles informations au fur et à mesure qu'elles nous parviennent et décidons s'il y a lieu de lancer une alerte en fonction de ce que nous savons à ce moment-là. Compte tenu de l'évolution de l'incident survenu hier à Zagime, nous n'avons pas émis d'alerte. La sous-direction des crimes majeurs de la GRC de la Saskatchewan poursuit son enquête et travaille avec sa partenaire de la police de File Hills et de Regina afin de définir les circonstances et les raisons entourant ces deux incidents afin de déterminer s'ils sont liés. Nous tenons à rassurer la population. Nous publierons les mises à jour régulières sur cette enquête dès que nous le pourrons. We will now be taking questions from the media. Please note you'll be allowed 2 questions each. Nous allons maintenant procéder à vos questions. Veuillez prendre note que nous limitons les questions à deux par journaliste.
What's the criteria for an emergency alert, and can you elaborate a little bit on why this event didn't meet that criteria?
So the criteria, I don't have the specific criteria right in front of me at this point, but some of the considerations that we consider are if there is an immediate danger to the public, if there's information that we can provide them in order to keep them safe, and information about the offense that's occurring. At this point in time, those things were considered yesterday with respect to these offenses as we were carrying on. So we didn't feel it met the criteria at that point because we believed it was potentially a targeted residence, and that was a factor in that decision-making.
Do you believe that it's possible that could change and that you would have to put out an alert?
Given the circumstances, yeah, if we're provided with information at any point that increases that level of seriousness that the public is facing at that point in time, we would immediately issue a dangerous persons alert.
Do you have any suspects thus far, being at large?
The investigation is, unfortunately, it's still in its infancy. Given that it is a quadruple homicide, it is a complicated, complex investigation, and it's requiring a large amount of resources to forward. We are working towards identifying suspects that we will be able to hopefully charge in the future.
Can you elaborate on how many resources you have right now working on this?
So the RCMP Major Crimes Branch is made up of Major Crimes Unit, which their primary mandate is to investigate homicides. We also have the General Investigation Sections and a number of other units. So General Investigation Section also investigates serious persons crimes. We've got 3 teams throughout the province, so we're using resources from all of those teams, including our team here in Regina for Major Crimes Unit. We've also using our partner support services like forensic identification services, essentially any unit within the RCMP that could provide us with support to make sure this investigation is completed properly, that's what we're using.
So is it possible that who's responsible for these homicides is still at large?
At this point in time, we don't have information to confirm that they're still at large. The investigation is still ongoing. We don't have any reason to believe that there is a level of danger to the public at this point, and we do believe that it was a targeted residence. So we're working to forward that investigation.
Just with it being targeted, what makes you believe that it's targeted?
It's through the course of the investigation, the information that we're gathering. We don't believe that it's a random incident that occurred. So I can't get into more information about the specifics of that, as that's very much part of the investigation that's ongoing.
This presser was delayed. We understand that next of kin was being spoken to. Can you confirm at this time that all victims, their next of kin, have been spoken with?
What I can say is that we are working with all of the families that we believe. So as I mentioned before, all the victims have not been confirmed, positively identified through working with the Saskatchewan Coroner Service. But if we believe that they are somehow impacted by the offense that took place, we are working with those families.
Can you at all let us know if it is a stabbing or a shooting, or is there any information on that at all that you can share with the public?
At this point, we are like, is with respect to the manner of death? Is that what you're asking? Okay. So again, that's something that we're working with the Saskatchewan Coroner Service to determine the manner of death in these homicides, and that's still ongoing at this point.
Will you be releasing an update with these victims' names?
So what we will do is work with the families, and if they are supportive of us releasing their names, then we will work with them to do that. But ultimately, we're going to work with the families to determine how they want to proceed with this alongside of us.
So it seems as though there was, excuse me, a heightened police presence in a number of different areas east of Regina on certain First Nations and whatnot. Are you able to just sort of speak to, I guess, what police resources were deployed, where they were deployed, and I guess where they are now?
So there's still investigators in all of the areas following up with the firearms offense that took place later in the day yesterday on Zagime. And there's investigators that carry the Kettle. Yesterday, we did have our emergency response team respond to the incident at, would have been Zagime, to just aid in that public safety component.
So I guess what advice do you have for folks now in those affected areas? What should they be doing? Like there was instructions for some folks to be staying inside, contacting family members, so on and so forth. What should folks be doing now to keep themselves safe?
I mean, at this point in time, I can't specifically say what individuals should do to keep themselves safe. That's a very individualized response. I don't believe we issued any instructions as to what individuals should do, so I'm not sure where those instructions came from.
I'm wondering if you could tell us if this incident was gang-related in any way, or if any of the suspects were connected to gangs in any way.
Right, so we're still at the very early stages of this investigation. And so the actual motivation behind it is a part of the investigation. And if it is gang-related, that will be uncovered through our investigation.
And kind of a similar question, whether or not drugs were involved or in any way.
Right, again, so that's part of our investigation, is determining the motivation for why this incident happened. And so if it is drug-related, we'll uncover that through the investigation.
The man accused with the gun pointing, is he on parole at all?
The Keegan, okay. I can't speak to the conditions that he may be on right now. I don't believe, like, part of his criminal history will be part of our investigation, but in terms of conditions by parole, I can't speak to that.
What prompted the Evan Gray show to be the one media outlet which was granted a one-on-one interview where this topic was discussed?
Yeah, I don't have an answer to that question. I wasn't a part of that interview or the planning process.
I saw the File Hills Police Department on scene yesterday, and I did understand that they then contacted RCMP. How do your two departments work together on such a tragedy, such a complex investigation as this?
Mm-hmm. So we actually have a very good working relationship with the File Hills Police Service. They're a smaller service, and as such, they do rely on the RCMP to provide them with support for major investigations, specialized investigations, which include homicides. So we do come to support those investigations, and we have a very good working relationship with the chief and with the members of that police force. It's been working very well.
Were these four people known to each other?
We do not have positive identification on the victims, so I cannot speak to whether or not they are known to each other.
Is there work underway, I guess, to sort of go through those affected areas and ensure that there's nobody else that was injured or killed?
So the police have gone through the areas that are of interest within this investigation, and we've determined at this point there's no outstanding injured people related to this, the homicide investigation or the firearms investigation that occurred later on.
Peut-être préciser en français les effectifs qui ont été déplacés sur les lieux, les effectifs qui sont encore là et pourquoi il y a encore une présence policière dans la région.
I don't know if there's talk about the different police services that are still on site and presence in the area, certain investigation.
Like scene security?
Yeah, and they're like police services that are located here.
So currently, there are File Hills Police Service members on scene providing scene security for the area and working with the RCMP investigators. There's also likely an increased detachment, RCMP detachment personnel in the area. as they're working through to process the scenes, as well as the forensic identification services that is our specialist in collecting the evidence at scenes.
Absolument. En termes de partenariat, la GRC a travaillé avec le service de police de Fall Hills, le service de police de Regina et aussi différentes sections à l'intérieur de la GRC. Les crimes majeurs, la section de l'identité judiciaire sont présentement en train de travailler en coopération sur la scène du crime présentement.
Voyons encore une présence policière importante sur les lieux. Est-ce que la population doit s'inquiéter, juste le dire en France?
Oui, c'est juste ça. OK, this one, c'est juste ça. OK, c'est good, yeah. Non, c'est juste l'enquête est présentement en cours, alors la police et les différents partenaires s'affairent à travailler sur la scène pour faire sûr que tous les éléments de l'enquête sont couverts.
Il n'y a pas de danger en ce moment?
Non, il n'y a pas de danger pour la population en ce moment.
I'm just wondering what do you think will help police determine whether there is a link with Mr. Beaver and the deaths that happened on area tunnels?
So as the investigation is ongoing, we do encourage anybody that has any information with respect to both the firearms-related offense that occurred later on in the afternoon on Zagime or the homicide investigation to please phone the police. That way we are able to follow up on that information and determine whether or not it is relevant to the investigation. And that's how we're going to forward who's involved, who's responsible, and ensure that we can, work towards a closure for this investigation and for the families.
Yes, it's maybe hard to say, but do you know when we might, like, I guess, is there a timeline so that folks might know when they might hear more about it? Do we expect more to come tomorrow, the next day?
So investigators are working right now around the clock to speak to witnesses, canvass the area for additional people that may know something, video surveillance. People have captured videos on their phones. So they're working around the clock to get that information. We could have another update tomorrow, but it may take time to work through the information that's coming in. In terms of how long it's going to take for an investigation, I mean, each individual homicide investigation is unique. So there's no set timeline to when we're going to get to the point of potentially laying a charge or identifying suspects. It's as the evidence comes forward and people who have information coming forward to provide that to us.
I realize Saskatchewan has had, of course, a very recent tragedy a couple of years ago, but in your experience as a police officer, how uncommon is something like this where there are 4 victims of murder at the same time, same location?
How uncommon is it?
How uncommon, yes.
Yeah, it is. It's a tragedy at the end of the day. How uncommon it is, I think, it doesn't happen every year, every month, but every time it does happen, it impacts everybody. It impacts the communities, the families, the province, the police officers. There's just so many people impacted by it on an extremely large scale. And I think that Saskatchewan, with the incidents that it has experienced, has shown resilience, but they are impacted by these every time it does happen, regardless of how frequent or infrequent it is.
Have you had any contact with the leadership from the affected First Nations? And I guess if so, what can you tell us about, are those First Nations closed off to folks, who may be wanting to travel there? Do you have any information about that?
So I can answer part of your question. I can't answer whether or not the communities have closed off, if they've initiated any of their own regulations at this time. I can say that we are working with Fall Hills Police Service, who is liaising closely with the First Nations leadership in order to make sure that they're aware of any ongoing updates and as well as any change to safety concerns for the communities.
So just in order to provide equal opportunity to everyone, there's been a number of people that asked more than 2 questions. Is there anyone that hasn't asked a question that would like an opportunity? No? I have my 5 in. If not, do that. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you everyone for your time. Are you-
That will conclude today's event. Ceci va conclure l'événement d'aujourd'hui. Merci. Thank you.
vu que c'est l'encadrement principal.